Should you use cash to buy a rental property or leverage in the form of a mortgage? That's today's video. Let's dive in. Hey there, I'm Clayton Morris. I'm the founder of Morris Invest. I'm a longtime real estate investor, and today we're going to talk about whether or not you should buy a rental property using cash or whether you should leverage it with a mortgage or private financing of some kind or traditional financing of some kind. Now, let me first say that it is truly a personal preference. What you do and how you go about your rental property strategy. And again, it all comes down to knowing what your goals are and then reverse engineering your goals and mapping it out between you and your wife, you and your husband, or if you're on your own, great. But you need to have those goals figured out and how much cash you have on hand in order to make it work. So let's start out by saying if you don't have any cash at all, then you don't have cash to work with. You're going to need to use some sort of financing, whether it's traditional or private financing. Now, if you're using traditional financing, you're going to have to come up with about 25% down for a rental property investment. Banks simply won't loan. They won't do the 80% where you have to come with 20% down. No, they're pushed up to about the 25% down. Why? For some reason, they consider it a riskier investment than the home you live in, which, we can get into other arguments about why I think that's crazy, but for now, that's how they do it. So a traditional bank, a Wells Fargo, Bank of America, your local bank down the street, 25% down, and they're also going to have you hit a minimum threshold. So the property probably can't be worth under about $50,000. So during an appraisal, you're going to have to probably be over that number. Some banks might go down to 45, some might be at 60,000, but just know that if you are really going to be targeting those $35,000 homes like I like to buy, or $40,000 homes that I like to buy, traditional financing is out the window. You can't use it. So know that going into it. So if you don't have cash, using a traditional bank, those are going to be the terms. And of course, it's going to rely heavily on your credit score, your credit history. If you have a foreclosure in the past or a bankruptcy in your past, or you have a lower credit score below that 680 credit score, you're probably not going to be in luck for getting traditional financing. Some banks may go down to about 660. But 680 is really going to be your cutoff. And you want to have a good credit score. You need to have a good credit history. You don't need to have any blemishes like a short sale or a foreclosure or any of those other things in your past. Now, you then can only buy a certain number of properties under your own personal name using traditional financing, which is also a big limitation. So you can buy, I think, they switch these rules around, but you can buy basically on one hand or maybe two hands. You can buy that amount of properties under your own personal name before the bank says, nope, you own too many rental properties. You're not allowed to do it anymore. Sorry, move on, find some other way of buying properties. So that's traditional financing. And what about private financing? Well, private financing is fantastic, and this is something that we've definitely used to acquire rental properties, my wife and I, and many of our investors that we work with use. Now, private financing can come in any form, right? It could be your Aunt Mildred who's got $200,000 laying around. Or it could be a private institutional lender, which is just basically a fund, a group of people that got together and pooled their money into a fund and then are lending it out with certain terms. Now, again, there might be terms where you have to hold the loan for 5 years minimum, and you cannot pay it back before 5 years, so you've got to hold it for a certain amount of time, and you might be able to get a 30-year note on that, 30-year mortgage, but you're still going to have to hold it for 5 years. You can't. There's prepayment penalties. You cannot pay it back in large numbers. But if you work with your Aunt Mildred, you could construct it any way you want. So private financing is powerful, and it's certainly a way to acquire a lot of properties in a short amount of time. Now, again, in private financing, you typically will probably have to come with some money down on the table. Private financiers like to see that you've got cash in the game, skin in the game, as they call it, right? So again, they may want you to put down 20, 25, even 30% down on a private finance deal. If traditional financing is out and you can't do it because maybe you have a foreclosure in your past, Private financiers are more concerned with the properties you are purchasing. They're going to look at those properties, they're going to have an appraiser come out and check it out, you're going to get an inspection done, all of those things, and they want to know that what they are putting their money behind is a solid investment, that it's going to cash flow a certain amount of money. So private financing can be powerful. It's not as stringent. You don't have to worry about those blemishes in your past. Again, if you had a short sale or you had a foreclosure, it's much more forgiving. Where do you find private financiers, you may be saying to yourself? Well, we've linked up a few in the show notes below. You can check out some of the ones that are some of the larger institutional financiers. But honestly, going to your local real estate meetup group, just go to meetup.com, and do a search for local real estate clubs in your area. Chances are there are private financiers hanging out at those monthly meetings. Go there, have a coffee and a beer with those people. That's how I've made some of the best connections I have in real estate investing. I loved going to my local RIA meetings once a month, and meeting with my friends, Kyle, John, Dave, and all of those guys, and seeing them. Everyone is a different guy, right? One guy's in mortgages, one guy does private financing, one guy is a flipper, and you have beers and you talk about real estate investing. It's a great way to find private financiers. And of course, the other way is cash. Now, this is my favorite way of acquiring rental properties. Why? Well, because you get immediate cash flow. You're immediately at the end of the goal, right? You've hit that, gone over the touchdown, you've scored a touchdown, you've hit a home run, all of those pieces come together, and you've immediately created cash flow, and you're seeing the benefits of owning that property free and clear. You're not having to carry a mortgage on the property if it's not rented for a few months, which doesn't really happen to me, but if you had a tenant that was out and you didn't get them in quickly enough, maybe it was hard winter months, something like that, you've got it free and clear, so you don't have to worry about those problems. Also, you have immediate equity in the property, and one thing I want to talk to you about is the ability to take that equity and turn it into leverage. So right off the top of this video, I talked about cash versus leverage. And you hear from people that say, never use your own money to buy real estate, use leverage, use private financing. And that is a very powerful tool if you know what you are doing. You know that your property is going to cash flow beyond all of your expenses and taxes and insurance. Great. If you can count on that, great. Cash gives you immediate equity, and of course, all the cash flow from your tenant is coming right to you. But what about owning that property free and clear and then cashing out of it and doing a refinance on the property? So that's what I like to do. I like to pay cash up front for my properties. So $35,000, $40,000, $45,000, those are the types of properties that I buy. And then I will bundle maybe 8 or 10 of them that I own together, and I'll do a cash out refinance with a bank. Now they're going to give me about 75% of the value of that property. So if it's worth $100,000, they're going to give me $75,000, and they'll just cut you a check. So they'll bundle the properties together. It's called a commercial portfolio loan. So we'll do a cash out refinance, and I'll take those properties, bundle them up, and then I'll take the cash right back out of those properties and buy, you guessed it, more properties. And you keep that snowball effect going. It was a simple trick taught to me many years ago by an investor who I know locally here in New Jersey who owns about 2,000 properties. That's how he did it. I took him out to lunch and I said, "How did you do it? You started with nothing." He said, "Well, I had enough for my first property. I bought it for like 60, and I rehabbed it a little bit, and then it was appraised at like 80 or 90. I went to the bank and they cut me a check for 75 or 80% loan to value." He said, "So basically I got the money back, the full amount that I put into it, and then I went and bought another one. And now that one was cash flowing, and he rinsed and repeated. So now he owned the second one free and clear, and he paid back the first loan. And then he owned the second one free and clear, and he paid back the second loan." You see how the snowball effect happens? So that's why I like paying cash for properties up front and then leveraging them after I've cash flowed and I've rehabbed them. Why is this also powerful? It's powerful because banks look upon a property that's rehabbed and it has a tenant in it and is already proving the income that you're receiving. So it's not speculation. The bank isn't looking at that and saying, well, the potential rent. is $750 a month. No, you can say to them, the actual rent is $750 and the house is now appraising at a much higher rate than what I bought it. It's appraising higher, it's cash flowing more, and that money is coming into my pocket. It's a performing asset. So bank, would you like to refinance this property for me and put a mortgage note on the property and give me cash for it? Yes, they will. They much prefer to do that than they prefer to do step one and just writing you a mortgage note on a property that they don't know how exactly it's going to perform. So that's my ninja trick. Cash, turning it into leverage. That's the way that I've had success in real estate investing. And I know a lot of high-level real estate investors have as well. Look, again, that's the way I do it. You don't have to follow that strategy, but it is a killer strategy for you to snowball your investments. I'm Clayton Morris. I would love to hear your thoughts, so go to the comment threads below this video. We have some great resources down there, some other playlists. Please leave your comments here, as well as subscribe to the channel. There's the big subscribe button right over there. Just go ahead and subscribe. We publish videos weekly here on the Morris Invest YouTube channel. We'll see you back here, everyone, next time on another video. Go out there and become a successful real estate investor. Take action.